Everybody who's joined us today, I'd like to welcome you to our second webinar with One Identity and IC Consult, Rethinking IGA, Smarter Governance for Complex Industry Identity Landscapes. I'm joined by Abdullah Ahmed, who's a Senior Solutions Architect at One Identity. Welcome, Abdullah. And I am Andrew Edney, a Lead Consultant at IC Consult. I'll just give you a very quick overview. IC Consult, we're a leader in the identity and access management world, 25 years plus experience, over 850 employees across 20 offices worldwide. We have over 300 active clients and work with over 30 partners, one of our key partners being, of course, One Identity, who are joining us today. We've been mentioned in various places, such as by Gartner and KuppingerCole, and we were very fortunate this year to be voted as the Partner of the Year for One Identity. So our agenda today is to look at 4 topics regarding governance. One is how the Identity Manager integrates into the modular One Identity fabric, and those who were able to watch Ollie and Stefan with the first of our webinar series would have seen more details about the identity fabric. I'll give a quick idea of some of the common IGA pain points and how we solve them for those who are less familiar with how the IGA systems work. We're going to have a demonstration by Abdullah on the enabling of automation, self-service and role management at scale, showing some of the power of One Identity Manager. I'll do a little summary of some real-world examples and customer success stories, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, I will now hand over the reins to Abdullah, and he will show you how things integrate.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. So I will start with the first part. So yeah. Who has been in the last session? So our colleagues Stefan and Oliver, they have already explained how our identity fabric is. So here, just a quick introduction or a review. It is an an ecosystem that seamlessly connects all our solutions, and of course. We have the identity governance pillar, we have access management, we have Active Directory and Entra ID management, and of course the privileged access part. So here you can see, of course, different products or solutions from our side. Within all those pillars, we have Identity Manager, we have One Login for the access management, we have Safeguard within the PAM, and of course active roles within the AD and Entra ID security management. But today we will go through the Identity Manager capabilities. We will not have the time to go through all the details and everything, but we will give you a first introduction. And of course, we will be happy if you have some questions and raise your hand or come back to us. So from a big picture perspective, our Identity Manager is an very comprehensive identity governance solution. It is based on an SQL database, Microsoft SQL database, and of course Azure SQL instance. We are providing a lot of standard connectors for different authoritative HR systems, especially for the SAP HCM, for SAP SuccessFactors, for Workday, Dayforce, and any other HR system could be connected. Of course, with that, we are also able to connect and load cost center data, organizational unit data, and aggregate all those data or identity data to the identity within the Identity Manager. Some of the HR source systems, they are also allowing write back of communication data to those systems. So there we can write back username and communication data like email address or phone number. We are providing an connectivity based on a framework, and we are providing a lot of standard connectors for different target systems. Here you can see examples of Active Directory, Entra ID, different databases. We are covering all the SAP world, and of course, for a lot of yeah, we can connect to any on-prem application and any cloud application if there exists any kind of APIs. But even we are able to connect and manage the disconnected applications through, for example, an ITSM system or through an email notification framework. And we are bringing, of course, also our own portal for, let's say, something like ticketing system to manage those disconnected applications. For an example, we are bringing for ITSM systems for ServiceNow an out-of-the-box connector, but you can, of course, connect any ITSM system if you have. So the user interfaces. First of all, we are providing a browser-based portal. We are calling them IT shop, where all the business users, end users, key users, and so on will use the web portal to create access requests, to provide approvals, or doing certification, attestation, creating reports, dashboards, whatever it's needed. The administrators can already use the portal to set config parameters to fine-tune or change the behavior of the UI for your need, but they have also the rich clients to administrate and yeah, manage and configure the backbone of the system. We are also bringing standard transport management system within those tools so that administrators and consultants are able to bring the change, transport them on a standard way from development system to queue system, from the quality assurance system then to the production system. So Identity Manager also provides an APIs, so REST-based APIs where you can connect your system to the Identity Manager, and Identity Manager will be in this case an end system or target system. For example, with a SIEM solution, you can connect to Identity Manager to monitor the processes within the Identity Manager and or any kind of the tables. And now on the right side, you see, of course, different core functionalities of Identity Manager, and especially I will not go through all of them, so just a few of them to emphasize. For example, we have the user lifecycle where you have all those join and move and leave scenarios. You have the provisioning of the users to the backend systems. You have the self-service requests, as I have mentioned before on the web portal, for example. We are bringing out of the box approval workflow editors with a lot of approval workflow procedures where you can create your own approval workflows by drag and drop the approval steps there. Delegation gives you the option of on a standard way create delegations to say if somebody is going on vacation or parental leave, somebody else will be the deputy for a certain time period, and so on and so on, and taking responsibilities. So you see there are additional stuff like password management, role management, and of course, we are bringing the attestation certification framework, and one of very most topic with attestation certification is, of course, the segregation of duties, the SOD topic. For the management, auditors, and compliance team, and so on, we are bringing additionally, of course, all those risk dashboards and ownership history, reports, and so on and so on. So we are bringing a lot of stuff so out of the box there. Maybe we will be able to talk about a few of them today, but nevertheless, if something is interesting for you, just let us know. Here is an overview or an example of our identity management fabric in a big picture in action, where you see, of course, different integration capabilities. In the last session, Stefan and Oliver, they have already mentioned all those details, but for those colleagues that have been not there, you can see Identity Manager here on the left side. You see the safeguard on the right side. You see the connectivity with all those capabilities, of course. Then, of course, here we have our one login as SaaS solution and our active roles on the right side. All those solutions, they have, of course, standard connectors to different target systems where you can then manage those target systems for different purposes. If we are talking about the deployment, so Identity Manager can be deployed as on-prem solution. It could be deployed on your private cloud and as MSP by our certified partners. And of course, we are providing Identity Manager as SaaS solution, and we will deploy that on Azure Cloud, and we'll provide it to you as SaaS. So with that, I will hand over back to Andrew to talk a little about all those pain points and how to solve them.
Thank you, Abdullah. I just remembered to unmute myself, which we didn't do during the dry run of this. I see that we have a hand up. So Wendy, if you have a question or something you'd like to do, could you post it? I think there should be a chat thing you can post a question to. We can't unmute you, but if you'd like to post that question, we can deal with it either now or a little bit later. Thank you. So what Abdullah just showed you was a very, very brief introduction to what is an extremely powerful tool. I've been working with it for 11 years and I'm still learning how much you can do with it. It's not because it's impossible to learn, but just because it has so much functionality in there. So I wanted to just go through some of the common pain points we see when we're working with our clients. The first one, I'm going to go through the one that seems to come up a lot, which is as part of the joiner mover lever, of course, is the joiner. When you've got a new hire coming in, that might be an employee, it might be a contractor. In this day and age, those new hires could also even be non-human identities, but we'll focus more on the idea of people being hired. The thing we see is the fact that you have HR systems that are not really intended to support the identity management system because they are HR systems. The identity management system needs to work with HR and accept data that we might consider a little bit messy. And this is especially true if you have multiple HR systems feeding into your identity management platform. One identity manager is very good at coping with that idea of having many authoritative sources. We always understand that managers are busy. It's great. We do this as our day job. We love identity management. People who are trying to run a business don't necessarily have that same enthusiasm. What they really want to do is to get their bit done so that their new hires can work. And one of the things of that is the classic problem that people start work and, oh dear, I don't have access. I don't have my login. I don't have the groups I need. So new hires, we really want to make sure that everything's smooth, everything's in place, all the approvals are done, any manual provisioning that needs doing has been done. And the common workarounds that people have is quite often, well, we haven't got time to think about doing this properly. We'll just pick somebody who's got sort of the same job and we'll copy what they can do and assume that new person needs all the same rights. And we'll see why that's a bad thing in a minute. A topic that does come up is licensing. Some products that people need for their day jobs are not free. They're not included in any enterprise agreements. They're licensed per person using it. And that can run up to a lot of money if you turn it on for a whole department. So we see situations where people say, well, actually, we'd like to make sure that the person has access only when they need it. And then we take away their access when it's not needed so that we can reduce the number of licenses we need to have. And One Identity Manager is great for the approach of using temporary assignments. When you do a request, you can specify, well, I actually want it just for next week. So I want it to start Monday, end on Friday. Your line manager and maybe somebody in the cost center will then approve that. And on Monday morning, you've got the license. Friday afternoon, when you no longer need it, it's taken away. If it turns out that on Friday afternoon, you're going to need it for a few more days, you can just ask to extend your request, and that goes through again an approval workflow. So the system is very good at managing this idea of temporarily granting access for licensing purposes and therefore controlling costs. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail on compliance rules because this is a very large, complex and interesting subject. I know Abdullah's going to have a little bit of a demonstration of what this means later. Segregation of duties is a very hot topic. We have things like the DORA legislation coming in to say that people shouldn't be allowed to even request things that are in conflict. And if they do request it, there need to be measures in place to deal with that. It's quite common to say that you want to have some sort of controls over who has access based on where they are in the organisation. So, for instance, if your access to your finance systems is based on you working in the finance department, that's a compliance rule you may want to implement. It says only people in finance can access finance. And the key thing here is that the identity management platform can aggregate a lot of data. It can collect it together, it can prepare reports, and it can then inform people of things that they need to change or things that they need to do. If you have a lot of people requesting access because they don't have it, a lot of people saying, well, I need this license temporarily, and then I need it again, and then I need it again, maybe you need to review the license costs. So data quality is a key thing across all of this. And that's something that the product does really well. And then the final thing is a standard problem you have, especially with people being much more aware of the risks that are involved. If you have somebody getting into your system, a bad actor somehow manages to get some access into your system, how do you reduce the amount of damage they can cause? Well, one thing is to make sure people don't have excessive entitlements. People build these up over time. If you move departments, it's like, oh yes, I know I'm an administrator of that system and I don't need to in my new role, but I'm still handing over that role into somebody else who's taken over from me, so I need to have access a bit longer. So the product is really good. When you move, it can automatically remove entitlements you don't need, but allow you to then have a temporary extension to some of that access if you're doing a handover period. And a key thing we see at most of our large clients and some of our smaller ones is the idea of periodic attestations of high-risk entitlements. And this is effectively just going around the business and saying, these people can do things that are a risk to the business. Do they still need to do that? And we make sure that this is done in a way that focuses what people need to do. It's done with a way that disrupts the business as little as possible. We don't really want to go and spam all the managers in the business every 6 months to say, tell us everything you need, because they've already made those decisions. So it's an area we work really closely with our business partners and say to them, well, tell us what risks you have, tell us what areas we can help you, and we'll then focus your efforts on things that give you the maximum reward. So I will hand things back now to Abdullah, but before he does the next part of the presentation, did you want to answer the question, Abdullah, or did you want to wait to the end for that?
I can answer the question. So the question came from Wendy, and it was the question that the flow between SAP and one identity is two-way for the user. Is this connector configurable to only flow on one way? Yes, you can configure that always in read-only mode and also in the provisioning mode. The answer is absolutely yes. And if you need more details, then we can also explain that. Just right. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Abdullah.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, and thank you for Wendy for that question. Now we will talk a little in details about the enabling automation, self-service, and role management at scale. I will begin with the automation part, which has been just mentioned by Andrew. So as you can see here, we have the joiner mover lever scenario, and of course, the automation give you the capability to do that. So first of all, we are this pyramid or triangle should give you a perfect world. Yeah, so that is how it should be. Usually, you will assign some base permissions to your employees to make sure that your employees have access, for example, to your company network. They're able to log in, for example, an AD account and an email address and so on. Then, of course, you should assign authorizations to the locations. So in that case, the users will automatically inherit authorizations of the location where they are. For example, get access to the building door if they're exactly in that building located. And the same, of course, for the organization in which department somebody is, and so on. Then the next step is, of course, assigning authorizations to the role and the position of the employees. Once they are changing their position or coming to the new position, they will lose automatically the old roles and authorizations. They will get and inherit new permissions. And at the end of that pyramid, you see that request part. If you have not implemented 100% automation, which is technically or maybe theoretically not possible because that will have a lot of workload to you, is if something is not automatized, you can still request it for yourself and for somebody else on behalf of somebody. For example, a manager can request access also for his direct line report. So this is a hyperview of an object. We are calling them business role. And within that business role, the name of that business role is Linux administrator. So you see that Linux administrator role contains multiple entitlements from different systems. For example, here's a Unix group, here's an Active Directory group, and an LDAP group, and an account definition, which means provide to the user an account to those target systems, and so on. All the members of these business roles, primarily assigned or additionally assigned, they will automatically inherit all those permissions. And once they will change their roles, instead of Linux administrator, Windows administrator, for example, they will automatically lose all those permissions. And primary in our case means the data is coming or the assignment is coming from a source system like an HCM or SuccessFactors or other HR systems. Additionally means you have been assigned to that role, of course, through a request process or through an automatic process. From the self-service perspective, with the self-service, of course, you will decrease the workload to the IT team by handing over the responsibility, of course, to your business side. But nevertheless, you see the system is providing a lot of functionalities here out of the box. As Andrew already mentioned, the topic of SOD compliance stuff. So if the user is requesting something in the portal, the system will automatically check against all those compliance rules. And if the system detects something during the approval process, it will go to an exception approval team to get an exception for that SOD conflict, to a toxic combination, for example. Your employees in different departments, they will be able only see and allow objects and requests which is allowed for them. So if I cannot see something, I cannot request that. And with that functionality, you can easily separate data from different departments to each other. So of course, you can see in the portal also the request history, monitoring of the fulfillment processes. And yeah, you can not only request for yourself, as I mentioned, also for somebody else. And of course, there are a lot of more use cases for the portal. So hopefully we can have the chance to talk a little about that, or maybe there will be questions for certain topics, but let's come to that back again. An access request is very easy to understand. It's like an online shop, yeah. Therefore, we're calling them IT shop. So the user is going to that portal and seeing there is a button he can push to request something new, and then he immediately will see all those service categories. You can bundle different categories just for filtering purpose. For example, all the accounts go to the accounts, the desktop application is going to desktop application, and so on. And on the right side, you see within a category, all those applications, we're calling them service items. And the user can select one or multiple of them and just add to the cart and submit them. Of course, you have the search capabilities. The user can go to the recommended products to get some recommendations. He can also use a colleague as reference user to make sure he is doing the same job. He should get exactly the same roles in the systems. You can define product bundles, which means for different type of user groups, you can create product bundles for the students, internships, controllers, whatever. And then those people, they can just select the product bundle for their role, and all the permissions will be pre-selected there, and that's just a click away from submitting. So from the compliance perspective, we have a little mentioned about that SOD stuff. We are bringing a very strong compliance framework. So with that compliance framework, you will be able to fulfill the requirements of all those regulations and laws like SOX, GDPR, and so on. And so on. That framework gives you the capabilities of detective control and of the preventative control. With the detective control, of course, you're able to find and detect all the already existing assignments from the backend systems. And even if administrators or somebody else will assign something outside of the IDM processes, the system will then immediately detect and report. With the preventative control, of course, you have the IT shop requests, which will be then requested by the end users or managers, whoever, and the system will immediately recognize there is an SOD conflict, will detect that. And if you have configured an exception process or exception way, then the system will go automatically to the that workflow will go to the exception team. The SOD or compliance officers will accept that risk and give an exception, or maybe they will reject that. On the right and left side, you see, of course, all those different additional capabilities of that framework, like reporting, correction, exceptions, compression, simulation, and so on. So we will see a little that in action today, not in full details, but giving you some ideas. Once you have created an SOD rule, that's an example of that. The technical view we have not shown here. So in that hyperview, you can easily see, for example, that rule is activated. We have always a working copy where you can perform some changes if it's needed, and then you will active that. The active version means the activated one. You see on the right side all the exception approvers who are allowed to perform an exception for that rule. You see some rule details by description and so on, but we will come to that later. You see mitigation controls, which are allowed to be performed for that rule violation if it is needed. Then you see the colleagues which are conflicting or violating against these rule. These are two people, and we exactly see those two people here. And we see on the left side, I think as example, also two additional people. They are also conflicting or violating against these rule sets, but they have already an exception, an active exception for that, and therefore you see that these are green. So by clicking to those objects, of course, you will jump to the next view and can see the details, who has accepted that risk, and so on and so on. You can always, of course, create reports which can be then downloaded immediately or sent to you, for example, via email. So if you're talking about the detective controls in the backend, so the approvers will log into the system once they have been informed, for example, and then they see immediately that tile with pending rule violations. If they're jumping in that rule violation, they see two colleagues are violating against certain rules, and they can take action. First of all, is something has been detected in the system, and they can just go here and resolve the rule violation by revoking that assignment, which is coming from a backend assignment, from a backend system assigned manually by administrators. So you can immediately do that. Or maybe you want to deny that exception or approve that. By denying or clicking to the ground exception, the system will fire two different events. those events can be cached by the custom processes, which has to be configured because that process depends on any customer will have their own process to be defined because that is very generic. For that reason, you as customer will catch that event and say, okay, in our case, we will send an email to the affected person. Maybe another customer will say, we won't automatically revoke that. The third one maybe create a ticket and so on. For that reason, catch that event and perform the process you needed. It's very easy then to configure such a processes, but that's the way we are going through that. So if we will talk a little about the data model, how we are understanding that. So from our perspective, entitlements mean any target system permissions, whatever it is, SAP ABAP roles, profiles, AD groups, Entra groups, Linux permissions, whatever it is entitlement. Entitlements could be part of the system roles. System role can contain another system role. And system roles and entitlements can be assigned to business roles. And business roles can be built hierarchically. The hierarchy can be top-down or bottom-up inheritance. So on the right side, you see not only the business roles, you see also the organizational objects like departments, locations, cost centers. All those objects can be built on the same way, hierarchically, with top-down or bottom-up inheritance, and can contains all those objects. From the assignment perspective to the identities, there are three ways. The first way is primary assignment of those objects to the identities. That means it is coming from a source system, for example, HR system. Secondary means it has been assigned to the user by request processes or maybe manual process if somebody has assigned the user to the department manually, for example, administrator, which he should not do, but it is technically possible. The last way is, of course, creating a dynamic rule to make sure that the user is automatically assigned or revoked from those objects by fulfilling a certain condition. So, and if we pick one of those objects, in this example, the business roles, which capabilities can we provide out of the box for you as customer? So a role owner can perform a lot of different functions against that business role. First of all, it can assign entitlements or request entitlements to the business role he is owning through a request process. That means that in the backend system or the system owners, they can accept that request or even reject that. That means you will make sure that your business role owners are not allowed to assign any entitlement to their business roles without approval of the system owners. Okay, so 4I principle, for example. If you want to assign new membership, that can also go through a request and approval processes. If roles are too big, they can split them. If they are too tiny, they can merge them. They can restore deleted roles, rollback change to based on a point in time, and generate reports and so on. Business roles can be also designed by a recommendation analysis. We are bringing also within that topic role mining tool with Identity Manager. So now we will come to a short video just giving you a very first overview of the request process. We have here an end user, Kevin. If he is logging in, he cannot see that much in the system. He can just see create new access request. On the left side, the service categories. On the right side, the service items. He can go through all those different items. In this case, he's going to the SAP ABAP roles and just picking one additional role he needs. He can click to the details, seeing here logo, some descriptions, and so on and so on. Maybe you can add their cost, license cost, as Andrew mentioned, so giving to the user those informations if it's needed. So he can go and edit, putting a reason. Maybe he will also add a valid from valid until validity, in this example, he is selecting that until the end of November for this year. The system immediately recognizes, as he is trying to submit, that there is an SOD conflict, and that SOD conflict can be also seen and understanding by IM. There is an SOD role name and all those descriptions, why it is allowed or not allowed, and to which conflict that will bring the user. But nevertheless, maybe he has chatted with a responsible person and he can send that request for SOD approval. So now we can go to view his request history. And in the request history, for example, you can see also the workflow. You see there was a compliance check and this compliance check failed. And now there are exception approval colleagues, in this example, 4 colleagues with different name. We are now picking the user Kurt and trying to log in with Kurt as our compliance officer to make sure we will now approve that SOD conflict. So he is now logging in. You see more tiles in the system, as you can immediately see, and of course also that request. So that compliance officer is now going, of course, to the same workflow, seeing there is a conflict. He can also go to the details of that rule violation, and if he has accepted, he can also assign mitigation controls. Mitigation controls can be anything, for example, a safety instruction carried out to the user that can also bring to risk reduction. You can send an inquiry or approve that. And in this example, he's shrinking the assignment validity from 2 months on 2 or 3 days and putting there a reason for the auditors, because that was very critical request. For that reason, I'm just shrinking that now to 2-3 days to make sure the user is able still to work, but nevertheless, the risk will be reduced to those 1-3 days to make sure that the user has not additional access to the system. So now the manager of the user has logged in. He see all those workflow, also that the user Kurt has approved that. On the bottom side, you see the manager has different options to do, add additional approvers or escalate that, approve, decline, and so on. So now he is approving that with a reason. And as he's logged out, the system will, of course, provision that immediately to the backend system, in our example, an SAP system. And now we are logging to the SAP system, searching for the user Kevin in our example, and just going to his roles to make sure the second role we have assigned to him that has been already assigned now, and it is valid until the 11th of October. So with that very good short video, hopefully, I will give and hand over to Andrew for a real world example, of course. So Andrew, it's...
Thank you, Abdullah. Yes, I'm just Abdullah makes it look very easy, because once you've used the system once or twice, it is very easy. The team have done a lot of work to try and improve the way the user interface of the web portal leads people through. People are familiar with online shopping, and the request and approval model is very similar to that you select things, put them in your cart, submit them, and then the approval process is easy. The system can also advise approvers based on information that the system can gather. So it's not even a case of the fact that the approver has to make a decision in a vacuum. They can receive some useful information, and that's something that Stefan showed last time. So I'm going to do a little example here of one of our clients who had a very specific need, and they asked us to develop a scalable solution to meet that need. In their particular case, they had a new joiner workflow where most of their new joiners needed to be given an Exchange online mailbox, but not all of them. And when they were given a mailbox, they needed a specific kind of license. So what they wanted was a system whereby when the new joiner was hired, the system would be told this by the HR feed. and 30 days before they started, the system would then start the process of assigning them the entitlements they need. So once they get to the 30 days, a back-end configuration kicks in and it generates IT shop requests on behalf of that person. So although they've not started yet, they're still known by the system, and it can then put together the appropriate things to request, submit them on their behalf, and it goes into the approval workflows. Why do you want to do this 30 days before you start? Because you don't want to rush people. You want to give people time to do a good analysis of what they need. If there are some optional products in the collection that they're giving them, you want to have a chance to make decisions on that. There's also the case that some of the things that have been provisioned may not be automated. So in their case, they had Exchange Online. We have a connector for that. It's very good at setting things up in advance, but there may be some other functionality they need which requires some sort of ticketing system to raise something for somebody to go away and do manually. So you have this approach of setting things up. The approval workflows can be used to control. So if you have some of the optional bits, the manager can look at it and go, actually, this person doesn't need that. The system also will allow target system owners to look at it and then question why somebody needs things. So it follows all the best practices you have for day-to-day operations, but without the complication of people having to know, oh, I've got a new starter coming, I better go and place the orders for them. So it takes the workload off the manager. They just have to look at the list, decide which things are appropriate, and push that through. Once the provisioning is done, it means the user's account is ready, and when it gets enabled on their first day, they can start. So it simplifies the process of the new hire starting. There's little for the manager to do apart from look, go, yep, I'm happy with that, approve things in the front end, and away it goes. The guys who worked on this were very pleased with what they'd done, and they shared with me some of the details of how they did it. It's a fairly simple process for those that are familiar with the system. You create a set of business roles which are related to the automated order placement, and those then can select different groups of products using the extended attributes to do that. Why we did it this way? Well, simply because we wanted to put all the control into the hands of the team that are using the system. We wanted the business to be able to do this. We didn't want to say, well, you have to come to us as consultants all the time to make changes behind the scenes. It's all manageable through the front end. So a bit of configuration, a process, a script, and the system does the rest automatically for them. The other thing that was quite interesting about this was that there will always be situations which are a bit unusual. So you might have a new starter coming, don't get the 30 days notice. They're going to start tomorrow. We've just found out about this. So the manager goes, well, I know they need this really quickly, so I'm going to order that for them straight away. So while the system's doing what it does in the background, the manager's already put a request in. So the background process looks, sees they've already got that request and doesn't regenerate it. So it doesn't double up the work. And this sort of thing is quite useful because it's generic, it's data-based, and if they want to use it for something else, they can do so. They can adapt it as the business goes along, add additional things in so new joiners get that, take things away if they're no longer needed. And because it's all request-based, if somebody no longer needs something, either they or their manager can go and unsubscribe that request and say, I don't need this anymore, you can take it away. That's just a simple example of some business discussions that we had and came up with a solution that worked for that particular business. It's a large German company. I won't mention their name, but they are pretty well known for anybody in Germany. We do have a number of other customers we work with of One Identity Manager. On our webpage, on our website, we have a list of customer references, which I'll make sure you have links for after the presentation. I'm not going to go and read through all of these because we're getting towards the question and answer stage, but we do have some good examples there. It shows that working with the right partner, these things are complicated, they are worthy of good thought, but we can give you experience, and by matching you with a good and very powerful product, you can be successful in delivering what your business needs, either whether it's cutting down on manual tasks, whether it's cutting down on risk, whether it's just giving the business the knowledge that they have everything in hand, because that's sometimes the case, is that you believe you're doing a good job, but you don't know. So having reporting coming out the system saying, actually, yeah, we're doing well, is useful for the managers. And finally, I'll plug the One Identity YouTube channel. They've got a lot of good YouTube videos, and some of which are to do with their customer and partner success stories. We are webinar number 2 out of 5. We have 3 more webinars planned. If you enjoyed this one and want to find out more about the other aspects of the system, the identity fabric and how it could fit in, we have Jacob and Rito doing their presentation on the 23rd of October regarding AD management. We have Torsten and Ralph talking about the privileged access, which is obviously a very key subject, and that's on November the 13th. Oh, no, sorry. Yes, so that's one aspect of privileged access, and then we've got the other privileged access management also being discussed on the 20th of November with Floyd and Holger. So in one aspect, it's to do with the zero trust side of this, and one of them is how you are connecting things together. So this is how the fabric lines everything up. So it'll be good to join those. So from there we go to our opportunity for people to ask questions. Obviously we've had Wendy already ask about the flow of data between SAP and One Identity Manager, and I'll see if we have any other questions.
There have been one raising hand from Surajit, and there's one question also. So maybe Surajit or Surajit, I don't know. Do you have a question? You have raised your hand. So if yes, please just type the question if you're muted. And there's one question is how to deal with shared account. Do you want to answer that question?
Okay. Yes, so this is something that comes up quite a bit, that you may have administrative accounts which are used by a number of people. So rather than giving each individual person an administrative account, you want to have a particular one that has the rights granted to effectively a shared account. Obviously, any administrative stuff through shared accounts you'd want to do through some sort of privileged access management system. But how do you know who's allowed to use that? It may be a system that's less privileged, and therefore using PAM for it isn't as appropriate. Well, it's great because One Identity Manager has the ability to associate accounts with the people using it. The restriction is that you need to tell the system who manages that account, so it has to have a named manager, but they can then allocate the usage of that account to a number of people. And that's quite useful, not least because if nobody's using it, you know that that's an account that can be closed down. So hopefully that answers the question.
So yeah, the reaction is yes. The last question is dealing with NHI. I assume they means non-human identity.
Obviously, a fairly big topic these days. The introduction of more oversight for service accounts and for other things. The product has a lot of functionality in that area. The idea of an identity being a person is very much historical. Now we consider service accounts and administrative accounts and other things as being worthy of their own management, and you can set up, I mean, it's quite common for people to request service accounts through the web front end in One Identity Manager. The system will create that, associate it with them. They can then request functionality, for instance, entitlements for their service account. The service account permissions are granted following normal approval workflows. And then the system will make sure that you know who is accountable and who is responsible for that non-human identity in the system. You can use the life cycle models onto those as well. So if you need a service account for 6 months, you can give it an exit date, and at the end of the 6 months, it will then shut down that service account. And if people need to use it further, you can then request an extension to that. So it's an area where the business really can do whatever they need that suits what they're trying to do. Anything else? I think we see an interesting one here that somebody's asking about. You've shown there, Abdullah, in the web front end, how people can do approvals using their web browser. How about other mechanisms? Maybe somebody's not sat in front of a laptop.
Yeah, that's of course a good question. Approvals are of course different ways. We have only demonstrated the way how to go to the portal and just approve, but of course they will be first of all notified by email, but with that email they're also able to approve via email, and of course with so-called adaptive cards for approval. That means in integration with Teams is Microsoft Teams is out of the box there, so customers can configure to raise approval requests in the Teams chat of the approvers. They can approve or decline, giving the reason of that decision in Teams, just chatting down, submitting, and of course identity manager then can automatically collect this information and bring it to the workflow for the auditors, and that will be then well documented, and they can then see that somebody has created access request, somebody has approved that via Team, for example, and also getting the reason of that approval, and of course the provisioning part. So I hope that that answered that question. Anything else?
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe another one from Francois there, who said, how realistic would our project be if it is to primarily focus on building business roles, if we connect solely to our HR systems authority source, as well as AD and Azure, providing that all applications, entitlements are managed by AD or Azure in a hybrid environment? So you can do as much or as little as you want regarding business roles. If your HR system as an authoritative source can provide you everything you need to make appropriate business roles, the system will do that really, really well. It will take away all the headaches regarding provisioning because it can do it all automatically. What I've tended to find is that you have an 80-20 rule, that 80% of what you want to do can be handled in that way. But usually you have that 20% which you don't implement in quite that model, simply because you want the system to be up and running. You want to give people the benefit of that 80% as quickly as you can, and having to sit and work out how to do the 20%, which is a bit more complicated, delays things. So get the delivery in early, get the business benefiting from your investment really quickly. And if you can do that, if you've got business analysts who can pin down exactly what you need through the HR data, that's fantastic. But we find that mostly by the time you've been around that once, something has changed in your business and you go, oh, we need to revisit this, we need to revisit that. So don't focus too much on doing it that way. But when you can do that, it's a big win. And as I said earlier, the great thing about an identity manager is that it will pull data in from multiple places. You can use AD and Azure as an authoritative source if that's appropriate. We have had many clients who've used that. They said, well, some of the stuff comes in through our HR system, some will come in through a third-party supply system, and some of it will just get through AD. We'll just get through Azure if we're working with partners where we've already done all the work in Azure to connect up, and we get the information through our trust relationships, etc. Then we can use that as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Francois.
So there's a question of Sebastian. Do you have seen that? So
sorry. Okay, I
will go to that. So do you have any idea on how to use Identity Manager as provisioning platform for highly complex, fine-grained access management? So system, for example, distribution of attribute constellations into the FGAM system or similar.
I'm not sure I've come across that term of fine-grained access management. I've The only context I've seen that with is to do with the privilege management within Entra, where you can grant people entitlements so that they can request administrative type roles within Entra. So One Identity Manager controls that side of the fine-grained access management and says you can request this stuff, but actually when you turn it on and when you turn it off, it's left to the target system. So Entra lets you then go and say, well, I need this for 10 minutes. I'll request it. It's approved because I already had that approved by One Identity Manager approval processes. But theoretically, anything that has an API can be integrated. That the product is able to be configured to work with just about any system, providing it offers an interface. And it has very, very good modeling systems within standard functionality, and you can extend that modeling as required for any particular needs you have.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. If we are talking, for example, about the SAP ABAP systems, they are quite very complex and very fine granular. Yeah, and nevertheless, we have already introduced the topic of context-based requests, which make sure that user can, during the request process, select one or multiple contexts, and regarding those contexts combination, a certain role for that combination could be then automatically selected and provisioned to the backend system. I hope that will answer also. So add to your answer that question. Sebastian, can you agree?
Okay,
yes.
That's good. Okay.
Thank you. So
I think we're just about out of time. We've got probably time for one more question if somebody has one. And if not, then I thank you, Abdullah, for supporting us on this webinar today. And I thank everyone who's joined. Hopefully it has provided you with a bit of an oversight of how fantastic One Identity Manager is at implementing identity governance as part of the One Identity fabric.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.